People often say Jamaica floods because the drains are dirty or the sewage system isn't working, but here's the truth. Even if every drain across the island was spotless and every gully was properly cleaned and maintained, Jamaica would still flood. The real problem isn't just the drains, it's where we built our cities and towns. Jamaica is one of the most mountainous countries in the Caribbean, yet most people don't live in the mountains. They live on the flatlands below, the same areas that rivers carved out over thousands of years. Those flatlands are really riverbeds, valley bottoms, and floodplains. They look perfect for housing and development because they're wide and easy to build on, but they were never meant to stay dry. When you look at Kingston, Spanish Town, and Portmore, the heart of Jamaica's population, you're seeing one massive basin surrounded by hills and sea. Every time it rains, water rushes down from the mountains and collects in these lower areas. It's not that the drains don't work, it's that the entire landscape funnels water straight into the same places where most people now live. Kingston sits on what used to be river delta and swampland. Over time, those areas were filled in to make space for roads, houses, and businesses. But underneath all that concrete, the soil is still the same clay and silt that can't absorb water properly. So when heavy rain falls, it doesn't soak in, it stays on the surface. Even when the drainage system is working, there's a limit to how much water it can move. The same thing happens in Portmore. The entire area was built on reclaimed land between the Rio Cobre and the sea, land that was once swamp and marsh. Some parts of Portmore actually sit below sea level. When the rain falls, the water can't drain naturally, so the area depends completely on pumps and canals to stay dry. Once those pumps reach their limit, the water has nowhere to go, and streets start to flood almost immediately. Spanish Town has its own version of the same story. The old capital sits on the wide floodplain of the Rio Cobre. Back in the day, that made sense. The land was fertile and close to water. But over time, farming fields turned into housing schemes and business districts, and the natural space that used to hold floodwater disappeared. Now, when the river rises, it spreads right back over the same land that people have built on. When you put all of this together, it becomes obvious why these three areas flood so easily. Kingston, Portmore, and Spanish Town form one continuous low-lying plain. It's basically one large catchment area at the foot of the mountains. Every drop of rain that falls up in the hills eventually finds its way down there. When the rainfall is heavy or lasts too long, there's simply nowhere for all that water to go fast enough. That's why cleaning drains only helps up to a point. You can't stop gravity. When you live at the bottom of a mountain, all the water from higher ground is coming your way, no matter how well the drains are maintained. And that's the part most people overlook. The real issue is geography. If you can see the mountains towering above you, that means you're already standing in the valley, the natural path that water takes every time it rains. This pattern repeats all across the island. Montego Bay's flatter sections flood whenever rain runs down from the surrounding hills. May Pen sits on the Rio Minho floodplain, and Black River Town lies almost at sea level. Onoto Bay, Yalas, and Morant Bay all sit at the bottom of valleys where rivers from the Blue Mountains empty into the sea. Everywhere you look, Jamaica's major towns are built where nature intended water to flow. And that's not by accident. When towns were first established, people chose flat land near water for farming and transport. Those were the best places to grow food, build roads, and move goods. Nobody back then thought about flood risk or urban expansion, but centuries later, with more people and more concrete, the natural balance changed. What used to be open land that absorbed rainfall is now covered with houses, asphalt, and concrete. The rain still falls the same way, but now it has nowhere to go. So even when the system is clean and functioning, it still floods, because the volume of runoff is too high and the flow too fast. It's not that Jamaica was designed badly, it's that the island's geography leaves very few options. Most of the country is steep, hilly, and rocky, difficult terrain for large-scale development. The few flat areas that exist are the same ones rivers built over time, and those are the areas we filled with homes and businesses. So the places that were easiest to build on are also the most likely to flood. If you look at a topographic map of Jamaica, it's easy to see. The mountains dominate the center, while the majority of the population lives around the edges, in valleys, on plains, and near river mouths. That's the beauty of Jamaica's landscape, but it's also its weakness. So yes, keeping drains clean helps. Better infrastructure helps too. But even if everything works perfectly, flooding can't be completely prevented. The island itself acts like a funnel, highlands in the middle, lowlands around the edges, and people living right where all the water naturally collects. Combine that with rapid construction, poor soil drainage, and stronger rainfall events, and the outcome is almost guaranteed. There's no simple solution. We can't just move entire cities uphill, but we can plan smarter. That means protecting natural waterways, leaving buffer zones clear, and designing new communities with proper runoff systems. It also means understanding that some places will always be prone to flooding, no matter how advanced our drainage becomes. Nature doesn't forget its old roots. When rain falls hard enough, rivers always return to the paths they carved long before we built on them. Flooding in Jamaica isn't just about infrastructure. It's about history, geography, and the way the island developed. The same valleys that made the land fertile also make it flood-prone. Kingston, Portmore, and Spanish Town didn't end up where they are by chance. They grew in the only spaces flat enough to build, but those spaces were shaped by water, and water always comes back. So the next time you see the streets underwater and people blaming blocked drains, remember this. Even if the drains were spotless and everything was maintained perfectly, Jamaica would still flood, because the real issue isn't just dirty drains, it's the land itself. The country is built on old riverbeds, floodplains, and valley bottoms, and when it rains, all that water from the mountains has only one direction to go: down. Until we fully understand that, flooding will continue because the island isn't malfunctioning, it's just being itself. The mountains send the water down, the valleys collect it, and the sea eventually takes it away. Jamaica floods easily not because something's broken, but because that's exactly how the land was shaped to work.
And maybe that's the bigger lesson in all of this. Jamaica isn't broken. It's just built on a kind of land that demands respect. You can fight it with concrete and drains, but nature will always remind us who was here first. Every flood we see isn't just water in the streets, it's the island showing us its original shape. It's a reminder that our cities were carved out of rivers and that those rivers still remember their way. So instead of just asking why Jamaica floods, maybe we should be asking how we can live better with the land we have. Because the truth is, the water will always come down from the mountains. The only real question is how ready we'll be when it does.